So yeah, I know for a lot of American citizens, it can feel like the wild, wild west in terms of the content of political advertisements and what's being said. But the bottom line, right, is that this is free speech. It's free speech by the candidates. It's free speech by organizations that are running advertisements for a given candidate or against a given candidate. And the way I always emphasize it, especially in my classes, is that in general, the government cannot regulate the content of these political ads. And that's a good thing, right? I mean, if the government were heavily regulating what you can or cannot say in a political ad, oh my goodness, I think we would all be worried about that. We would all be concerned about that. The bottom line is that these advertisements are really one of the best ways to learn the issue positions of candidates, to learn about their biography, to learn about their backgrounds. Now, a lot of advertising is negative, right? A lot of advertising is attacking the candidate's opponents, and that can turn people off. But there's also interesting political science studies that says it can generate turnout, that actually some negative advertising can push people to the polls. So, despite this wild, wild west feeling, the bottom line is whether it's a TV station, radio, social media, this is still one of the best ways, most effective ways for candidates and campaigns to communicate with voters. I would say it's par for the course, right? No shortage of political ads that are misleading or outright lies or fabrications. But we have seen that, well, even before television and radio, right? We saw this in the 1800s. Some of the nastiest political campaigns in our country's history were in the early 1800s. So, yeah, I'd say it's par for the course. But despite those warts, despite those blemishes, it still can be a valuable way to learn information about a candidate. And why are we seeing so many ads in North Florida, South Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, the Atlanta area, Pennsylvania? Well, this is battleground territory. So you can go to 40 some states in this country and see almost no advertising in the presidential race, whether it's radio, television. I find that kind of fascinating, right? It's really 6 or 7 states. It's those battleground states where you're seeing this massive influx of campaign advertising. They can matter in a really tight election. I mean, I'm thinking back to 2000 and Florida, where the 2000 presidential election, Bush versus Gore, right? It came down to Florida. It came down to the margins for a third-party candidate like Ralph Nader or Pat Buchanan. And while their resources were limited, the ability of third-party candidates to advertise in a battleground state when it's razor close, yes, that can very much make a difference in terms of who wins the state and then ultimately who wins the Electoral College, which we all know determines our presidential election winner. Political candidates are called public figures. I mean, the courts consider them public figures. And so for them to be able to win a defamation suit against someone, they have to show that a political advertisement was not only wrong, but the candidate or campaign airing it knew it was wrong and still decided to air it. That's called malice. And that's such a huge bar to prove, right? That not only was the statement wrong, but you knew it was wrong and you still decided to air it. And so because that's such a high bar for candidates to be able to win a defamation suit against another candidate, that's a lot of the reasons we see so many misleading or outright falsities in presidential campaign commercials.